Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guests. And I'll tell you something. People always ask me how I get guests, and this is weird. My guest today it's sort of a weird combination. A lot of my guests I get, some of them I know from doing comedy, and some of them I know just from different projects, and some I just solicit on, that sounds awful, but I'll send them a message on Facebook or Twitter. And at Twitter, you don't get lucky that much. I got lucky with Jerry Stahl. That was one of the only times I got someone off Twitter. And I just get different guests from people I know, like Terry Nunn from Berlin knew Wendy Lieben, who I got through Jordan Brady, and it all works out. My guest today, it's very funny. About 2 years ago, I was at Volcano here in Burbank, and there was two guys, and I just started my show, and they had long hair. And one who became a good friend is Troy Patrick Farrell. The other was John Corabi. And I said, are you guys musicians? So we started talking. And then like a year and a half later, when I said, I want to get more musicians on my show, because I want to get the bigger spectrum, I got Troy on, and then Troy was over for Thanksgiving, and he said, hey, I'm going to row for Gilby. I said, can you get me Gilby? And he goes, let me talk to Gilby. And I think you were in South America at the time?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And then my guest is Gilby Clarke. How you doing, Gilby?
I'm doing great, man. Good to see you.
It's great to have you come in here. And it's I got to ask you now, I get some musicians on, and you're from Cleveland originally.
Yes.
Now, as a kid, were you a big music fan? I mean, because kids sometimes, like me, comedy. It's like I saw, some Woody Allen stuff, and I loved that. As a kid, did you always listen to music? Was music around your house?
Music wasn't around my house. I was definitely like one of those lost kids, like I had a small family, brother and sister, mother and father were married. They ended up getting divorced when I was a teenager. And I was heading in the trouble direction. Okay. I was a bad kid, and somehow somebody in my group was talking about Kiss. They were brand new out at that time. I mean, we're talking early 70s. And I saw the Kiss Alive record, and I bought it. And that's what got me into music. My first concert was Kiss. Of course, I loved, Zeppelin, Aerosmith. But I just kind of got into music from my friends. I was in a stoner group, know, and that's really what it was. Didn't come from my household. Just kind of really came organically, really.
Well, it's funny you say about Kiss, because I remember when I was in junior high, I'm not sure, but they had was it Rock and Roll? One of the album they had
Rock and Roll Over?
It had a decal.
Yeah, Rock and Roll Over, yeah.
And you were cool if you had that sticker on your 3-ring binder. Like, everyone was like you. I remember I had the blue binder. I'm like, I got to get this album. I want to be cool. And my parents got the album. But that was so funny because Kiss was a generation for us. It was just sort of fantasy, too. It was different.
Yeah, absolutely.
You never saw that stuff.
Yeah. Now, because when I got into music at that time, I didn't even think it was odd that they wore makeup and had this show. I mean, that was, my first thing into music. So, after they were like my first band, then like I said, grew into, Zeppelin, the Stones, everything else that was popular at that time. And I know in my group in Ohio, there was a lot of debate. If you liked Zeppelin, you didn't like Kiss. Zeppelin had integrity. Kiss was just, a show band and stuff like that. But I liked what I liked, and still to this day, as a 50-year-old man, I like what I like. If somebody, I don't need somebody to tell me what I like and what I don't like. But back then, I love Zeppelin, I love Kiss. I'll go to both concerts.
Right.
It did not matter to me. And I actually didn't really even get into those arguments because it just didn't, mean anything to me at that time.
Now, you weren't really into music until a little bit older, and now when did you pick up your first guitar?
About the same time. Around that time, we started hanging out actually at a bowling alley, and they used to have cover bands on Sunday afternoon for underage kids, where there was alcohol, but for some reason we were allowed to be there. Of course, we couldn't drink. And I saw some cover bands, and man, I just really fell in love with that whole live experience of guys playing music and connecting and stuff. So, of course, my heroes, was Ace Frehley, Jimmy Page, even Peter Frampton, at that time. So, I locked in and wanted to be a guitar player and started right then and at that time. I took a summer job to pay for my first guitar.
Okay.
Took some guitar lessons, things like that. Guitar lessons were horrible. Back then, they taught you the old school way of folk, learn, these old folk songs, and I just wanted to play like Jimi Hendrix.
Right. Well, it's funny you say, because my high school actually had guitar lab.
Yeah.
That was a class you could take, and the same thing. It was like you sat there, and it was like some guy who was like, just such a doof. You know, he's sitting there like,
Yeah.
oh, listen, you're sitting there with your acoustic guitar, and it's like, you know, you can't do that. And I'm sure that it just, you know, kids who were trying to think they could take lessons.
Yeah.
It really was hard.
It was discouraging. It really was because, you know, like I even, you know, when my parents would ask me how it's going and things like that, I just go, you know, I just, at this rate, you know, 10 years from now, I'm going to learn what I want to learn, you know? So I stopped, you know, I mean, I was paying for the guitar lessons myself, you know, and paid for my own guitar. And I just didn't see an end, you know, so I stopped and just picked up stuff from, you know, guys around, you know, that played a little guitar, and just going to those Sunday afternoon concerts. I'd seriously watch the guitar player and go, oh my God, that's cool. I'm going to go try that when I got home. And I did that.
What was your first guitar?
My first guitar was a Les Paul copy. Okay. It wasn't a real one. It was a copy. My first real guitar was actually, strangely enough, it was a BC Rich Mockingbird Supreme. That may sound like an odd guitar. 1976 Supreme. It was because Rick Derringer played one, and I was a big Rick Derringer guy, man. I loved Rick Derringer, and he played it. It was something different. But that guitar ended up getting stolen. And when after it got stolen, I actually got it back, believe it or not, 5 years later, and I traded it for a Les Paul.
Okay.
so I'm a Les Paul guy.
So you're playing guitar in Cleveland, and I know, I'm just reading your bio. Sometimes you have to worry about bios. So you left Cleveland when you were 17. Is that true?
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
The bio said you left Cleveland when you were 17.
Actually, I think it was earlier than that. I think it was 15 or 16. Yeah, but yeah, it says 15.
Now, did you
let's go with the bio. Did you 17, 15 or 17.
Did you go to pursue music? You get out of Cleveland?
No, I actually, my parents had gotten divorced, and as a family, my mother took us, the three children, to California.
In LA?
So, yeah, in LA. So I moved to California. Once I got to California, you know, I started getting involved in the music scene here, and I went to 1 year of high school, and I moved to Hollywood. You know, I was out of the parents' den and everything, and I was living in Hollywood at 17.
Now, were you a good guitarist at 17, or were you still? So, but you knew you wanted to be a musician.
Yeah, it was funny because when I was in high school, that 1 year, we had one of those guitar classes, and I actually joined the guitar class. But what was funny is at that time I was already in a band. By the time I moved to California, I already found a bass player and drummer and started playing shows. You know, whether it's high school dances or
in California.
Yeah, in California. Wherever it was around town, we were playing shows and stuff. So I mean, I was 16, 17, and playing gigs and everything. When it was time to have our recital with that guitar class, they demoted me to drummer because they go, you get to play gigs all the time. This is our one and only show we do a year. So I actually had to play the Immigrant Song as a drummer in my guitar class.
Well, that's still a good song to play.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was hard at that time.
Better if it was Moby Dick. You could have sat there for like 2 hours.
Yeah, but it's funny because I wasn't the best guitar player in my school. You know, I mean, there were guys that I thought were really, really good guitar players. I think I was just more determined and kind of that thing of when you set your sights on something, you just do it. And that's the way I was. It's like, you know, all the other kids that were musicians, you know, were hearing it's hard to succeed in music and you have to fall back on this and that. And I had blinders on. I just go, hey, there's Hollywood. I can play, you know, hit Starwood, Troubadour, and I can do that. I didn't listen.
What was your band called?
My band back then was called, my very first band was a band called Candy, actually.
How'd you come up with the name?
I didn't. I joined the band. The band was playing around town. Kim Fowley was producing the band, and it was a pop band, but it's strange. I mean, Candy sounds like, you know, such a, you know, cheesy thing, but we actually were like a cross between like the Ramones and like the Raspberries.
Okay.
It was very odd. It's like we all had black, looked the same. We had black hair, looked like the Ramones, but the music was just a little bit more on the pop side. You know, it was rock, but it was it was kind of like Poison before Poison almost.
So you play with them.
Yep.
And then after they break up, where do you go? So
I was playing in my band and playing around Hollywood. I'd moved to Hollywood, doing gigs and things like that. I lived with the band. We all had a 2-bedroom apartment in Hollywood, and we were doing gigs and stuff. And the band, we made a record. We did a tour. We opened for like Rick Springfield, Corey Hart. You know, obviously this is the '80s.
But it's funny you say that because you're sort of popping. It is such a different. I mean, when you think, you know, your career, how it's gone.
Yeah.
To think that you're in a band, and I was in the '80s. I liked Rick. I did a Rick Springfield air guitar my first time on stage in college. college to Jesse's girl, and the women loved it. I had to
He
learn
was
guitar.
incredibly talented, and for us, I mean, it was our first tour, and I mean, you know, it was 20,000 screaming girls. I mean, it was an incredible introduction, you know, to rock and roll touring for us. I mean, this is before bands like Motley Crue and Poison and Guns N' Roses. This was a different time back then, and so this was our first introduction. Was doing these tours. At that time, we were actually on MTV, but MTV didn't mean anything back then. This is before it really broke bands and did anything. So the band, by the time it was time to make the second record, things just weren't, the band didn't break. And that's when bands like Guns N' Roses were starting to take over L.A. We were an L.A. band that was headlining, the Palace is what it was called back then, which was a theater. We were doing very well for a local band and stuff. We headlined the L.A. street scene, which was a big thing back then. But we just couldn't really break. We just couldn't really go anywhere. So that's when bands like Guns N' Roses were starting to take off. So I left that band Candy. I wanted to do something a little harder. I had a band called Kill for Thrills, which I was not only the guitar player, I was the singer in the band. So I sang, played guitar, wrote the songs, got a major label record deal. We only had 6 songs in our set, and we got a major label record deal.
I heard. Now, what was it like? Because back then they said, like, when all the bands started breaking, it was the same thing they went through comedy when they were just giving, like, you do it 7 minutes, they give a development deal. For you guys, because that's when the Sunset Strip just started really blowing up with the metal, the glam rock,
everything.
So what was that? I mean, you were on the cusp of that. Was that just like a change? Like it went just from overnight, or how did it happen?
You know what? No, it didn't happen overnight. It kind of grew gradually. Basically, from my band Candy, when we were playing those days, there were the traditional clubs like the Troubadour, the Whiskey, the Roxy, even clubs like Madame Wong's and things like that. There were a couple Club Lingerie. Those are the traditional places to play. But then what started happening is these guys started opening these clubs that were like one night clubs, like the Cat House, was at a venue that was already a venue, but that night it was called Cat House. Okay. And then there was another one called White Trash. And then there's another one called Scream. So these were at traditional venues, but they only happened that one night. So like Tuesday night was Cat House. Friday night was White Trash. Saturday night was Scream. So these little clubs started happening around town, and that's what led to bands like Guns N' Roses, LA Guns, Faster Pussycat, that really started breaking because these bands weren't big enough to play the Whiskey, the Roxy, all these traditional places, but you could go play at Cat House, which was 300 people. So when that stuff started happening, that's what really broke into what people now refer to as the 80s scene in LA. That really made it a great place to hang out. And then it spilled on to the Roxy, the Whiskey. Well, the Rainbow was always happening back then. But it was a great time. I mean, it was, when you reflect on that, there was a lot of camaraderie that happened back then that obviously doesn't exist today. Okay. Because even though all the bands were in competition with each other, we actually were friends. Like, we went to see each other's bands play. As a matter of fact, we used to have Rock and Roll Sunday softball at Hollywood High, which, we were out at Scream till, 4 o'clock in the morning, and we'd come to play softball with eyeliner on and, roll up your jeans and things like that. And it, like I said, it was a really, really good time. It was a fun time, and it definitely led to some iconic bands. Like I said, Guns N' Roses, Jane's Addiction. These are bands. Chili Peppers even were a part of that scene back then. So.
It's so funny because I saw there's a recent documentary on Showtime about the Sunset Strip, and it was just crazy to see. Because, I've lived out here for 12 years, and you go to Sunset Strip, and it's all right. Yeah. But back then, it was just, like, packed. Like, on a Friday and Saturday, it was, like, wall to wall. Like, growing up in New Jersey, it's like the boardwalk back there where people were just droves. And and everyone was into metal. All the girls had the metal outfits, and it must have just been a great time for a young guy in a band.
It really was. I mean, it was. There were so many bands too back then, and that was the hard part, was how do you make your band stand apart from the other bands? And what was odd for myself at that time was, like I said, I was in a band that was before that scene, that band Candy, and we were a big band. Like I said, we were headlining all those kind of places. So when that scene came in, that was kind of the tail end of Candy in the beginning of that. So we were almost like the Godfathers, right. Coming in. It's like, we didn't have to really pass out flyers and stuff. We were doing well. But then when I started my new band, Kill for Thrills, we very much were a part of that scene of the, we played the Whiskey, we played the Roxy, we played Scream, we played Cat House. We were in the middle of all that stuff.
How do you start? Like when you started Kill for Thrill, how did you start the band? Because the Candy broke up. Do you sit there and go, okay, I'm going to sing and write, or do you go, I just want to find some guys that are cool? I mean, how does that work? Especially back then, because there's probably so many musicians, and it's just like any industry. It's like an NBA started coming out. There's so many names, and some of them just suck, but they talk a good story.
That's the thing is, I think it really depended on what you wanted to do. When you start a band, because as I said, there were so many bands. For my band, I actually. Strangely enough, I didn't want to be a glam band. Like I wanted to be almost like a blues rock band, But I mean, I wanted to, represent, Los Angeles at that time. Like I actually like bands like X. And stuff like that. In the Germs. Even though I wasn't a punk rock guy, it's like punk rock. Was a great time while that was all happening. Like, the Germs were playing the Whiskey while, Poison was playing, at the Roxy or whatever. But I mean, I wanted it a little bit more musical. I somehow wanted to combine, those things, like a good punk rock edge, but with good musicianship and good songs. So when I went to look for guys, it was, it was, I guess, I thought it was difficult, but looking back, it wasn't that difficult. I actually rated a couple bands is what I did. I took a bass player and drummer that were in a band, and I said, these guys play great together. They weren't happy with their situation, so I grabbed them out of that. And then I needed another guitar player for the band. I didn't want to be a three-piece, so we had this other band, same thing, where the guitar player wasn't happy and kind of like snagged him out of bands. And that really was apparently how bands were started back then. Is people just grabbed people out of other bands, like, you work here, and that's how I started my band.
So how long did that band go for?
This was probably in the late 80s, which I would say was the peak of like that Sunset Strip, LA street scene or whatever it was. Late 80s, probably like 88. Guns N' Roses was just starting to break at that time. And so we, started playing tours. We did we had a couple tours that we did around the States and everything. And then in the early 90s I got a call from Slash. There was a rumor on the street that Izzy was going to leave the band. Now, that rumor had been going around for about a year. And I called one of my buddies, Josh Richmond, and said, hey, Josh, if this is true, have him call me,
Now, did you know those guys?
Yeah, I did know them. I mean, that's the thing is everybody did know each other back then. We used to have this fun pickup band called Trash that we used to play some nights. It was basically just like a jam situation. We picked the set list as we walked on stage. We didn't tune our guitars, and anybody, like I said, guys from Poison, Axl, Izzy, they were all in the band. Everybody played in Trash at that time. So yeah, I knew the guys, from, being in, hanging out at Cat House, things like that. Strangely enough, Izzy, the person I ended up replacing in the band, I knew the best. Okay. Him, I knew, even before the whole LA scene. He was a small group of guys that we liked hard rock music, but also liked punk rock bands. So, we hung out quite a few times back then.
What's funny, you said the Rainbow. Little known fact, people, about the Rainbow. The Rainbow has great pizza.
Yeah, Rainbow has great food in general. Not pizza, spaghetti. I mean, I've never had a bad meal there.
So Slash gets in touch with you.
Yeah, so Slash calls me. Yeah, Slash calls me, and it actually.
Was your band still together?
My band was together, but we were kind of actually in limbo. It was a strange time. The record, we had recorded the record, but the record wasn't out. A lot of times back then, that could almost be a year from the time you finished your record between your record came out. There was a lot of record company bullshit of the perfect timing for the record to come out, and you need to do this. And so we were in a limbo. The record was done, but it wasn't out yet, and Slash called during that time. And to be honest, I was kind of not fed up with my band. I was fed up with the record company at that time. So he called and said, look, we need a guitar player. You want to come down? So I came down and I played and pretty much got it on the spot.
So it was an audition?
It was an audition, yeah.
And now, did you play their songs or did you play some of your own?
Yeah, he told me, when he said, just pick 3 songs and we'll play them, and that's what I did. I went down and we picked 3 songs and we played them. And then, he said, come down the next day. That happened for like 2 or 3 days. And he didn't say anything, and I actually thought, wow, they called me back a couple times. They never said whether they were auditioning other people, so I actually thought, wow, it looks like I got it.
Right.
They left my amp there, all that kind of stuff. But the second day I got home, and one of my buddies called me and says, hey, man, I just got a call from Slash to go down and audition for Guns N' Roses. I'm like going, God damn it, I've been down there for 2 days.
It's like, get off my
So I thought
get off my amp, damn it. Don't use my amp.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, I guess it. But I kept everything to myself. Strangely enough, within a week of this whole thing of me going down and playing with the guys, I get a phone call from Slash early in the morning, right? And he goes, hey, you know what? We're happy. You're good to go. We leave next week. The tour resumes, and we're going to go to New York and the show start. And I go, great. Within 5 minutes, and it's no joke. Back then, you'd leave MTV on your TV all the time. You'd always have the sound down.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
But it's just on in the background and stuff. As I'm getting off the phone with him, this is true. I look up and my picture is on MTV, and they're announcing the new guitarist of Guns N' Roses.
Wow.
As I get off the phone with him,
it's amazing. And can you imagine that, like nowadays how it would be? It'd be like before they even know, it'd be on Twitter.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
But yeah, back then MTV, because MTV News, it was, and it was great. I mean, that's when MTV was good. I mean, I remember I had MTV from the beginning.
Yeah,
and it was something you always had it on. It's like we went to spring break. I remember in college, it was Motley Crue's "Home Sweet Home" was a big song, and Sly Fox "Take Me All the Way." Totally across the board. But we would watch before we went to the bars the top 10 video countdown.
Yeah.
So now you sit there, and all of a sudden, Guns N' Roses is huge.
Yeah.
So now you're sitting
huge.
there, and you've toured with toured to a level of opening and stuff like that. Are you a little bit nervous? Are you excited? I mean, it must be as a guitarist and someone who, just came and said, hated his guitar class, had to play drums for Immigrant Song. All of a sudden you're sitting there going, I'm going to be in one of the biggest bands ever. How does that, I mean, how old were you?
I'm 50.
No, when you...
I was 30. At 30.
So how does that, 30, your life is going to just completely change.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was all those things you just explained. I mean, there was a lot going on in my head. Strangely enough, what was really going on in my head was the band. When I got the gig, like I said, I only played with them a couple times, and then they called and said the tour's next week starts. The next thing he said to me is, okay, now you need to learn all of our songs. And I go, well, why don't you just give me a list of what you guys play live? I'll tackle that, and then I'll tackle the rest. And he goes, well, the problem is we don't have a set list.
Okay.
He goes, Axl just calls them out, and you got to be ready for one of those 50 songs. You don't know what he's going to call out. And that is very unusual for a band. Usually a band has a set list they play almost every single night.
Right.
Guns N' Roses changes. I mean, there's staple songs they play every night.
But they have to.
But they change, there's no list. They call them out live, which is like how Peyton Manning runs a football team, how he goes like, that's how Omaha, exactly. So, I had to learn all those songs. So that honestly, what was in my mind was, oh my God, now I got to learn 50 frigging songs that, Guns N' Roses wasn't easy music to learn. It's not like somebody had to, there wasn't YouTube to learn it. I had to sit with the record with those headphones on and learn 50 songs within a week. And be confident enough to play them, like I said, at Madison Square Garden.
So that must have been crazy too, because all of a sudden it's Madison.
That was what was on my mind. Not I'm in the biggest band in the world, and I'm going to go out there. By the way, I'd also just gotten married, and no joke, like a week before I got the call from Slash. I just gotten married. My woman I had been with for 6 years. And I'm going to, oh, by the way, I'm leaving for 2 years with groupies and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff.
So all of a sudden you sit there and you said Madison Square. I mean, your first date you played with them was Madison Square Garden.
First gig was actually Boston. We played 2 shows in Boston. The second show was 3 nights at the Garden.
Okay. And now did you play in Philly?
I'm sorry?
Did you play in Philadelphia? Did you play the
we did play, yeah.
Because I went to so many concerts there.
Yeah.
But so all of a sudden
we played so many, I don't remember.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You remember the Garden. So,
so it's all of a sudden, it's going to be a whirlwind tour. I mean, when you're sitting there, you said 2 years, it's like, okay, with their success that you have to play U.S., Europe. Now, had you been to Europe before?
Never been out of the country.
Okay.
Not Mexico, but
Right. So what was that like? Because obviously
Unbelievable.
You're on a plane. Now, was it a
private plane? I had my own bedroom on a plane. I mean,
Really?
yeah, seriously. I mean, there really is that story of like I said, a guy that, like I said, really hadn't had any success into the biggest band. Yeah, I had my own bedroom on a plane. 5-star hotels, which I've only heard of before. All this kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, but the cool thing too was the guys in the band. Even though they're already in this band, they had only experienced this success within a year. For them, it actually came fairly quick. So this was their first headlining tour. So even though I was 6 months behind them, we kind of were still experiencing it for the first time. So it's not like, hey, we do it this way, you follow us.
Right.
They really were learning on the fly too.
Now, what is it like, though? I mean, just because we always joke around, like with comics and stuff, and anything in business, you go, that person's like a rock star. I mean, and it's true. It's a term, and especially used even in any line of work.
Yes.
Like, oh, that guy, that engineer. He's
They
a rock
write
star.
songs now, party like a rock star.
But now, what was it like because all of a sudden, I mean, you guys just must have been mobbed everywhere. I mean, what is that like to just have? Do you get claustrophobic, or do you sit there? I mean, you would think because all of a sudden you go from a guy who is recognizable. Your band was big. Your band was popular, and and you knew people. It was a set, and then all of a sudden you're going and there's, I mean, people just like running for you. It's not like an actor will walk down the street, people know it, but it's bands have that maniacal fan base. What is that like for just a guy who all of a sudden is sitting there, just got married?
Yeah,
you're going, I'm finally, I have this great gig. What is that like? Does it drive you crazy?
It didn't. It did not drive me crazy. I mean. Look, yes, there was a lot to deal with, and now when I reflect, oh man, I did some silly things and crazy things like this. For myself, like I said, I was 30 at that time, and when you're 30, you really feel old. It's the strangest thing. I mean, now I look back and go, what an idiot, but. I had thought, hey, man, I had been around for a long time, man. This was my break. I was going to enjoy this. It's like, this was a time when, I don't care. I'm eating the fucking ice cream. I was going to enjoy it. And that's what I said to myself. I go, look, at this point in my life, I'm going to be myself. I'm going to enjoy this. This really is a gift. This is a great thing. I mean, I do feel I earned it, but, this is a great thing. It was everything since I was, probably 15 years old that I had wanted in life. And it was. I mean, Guns N' Roses was the biggest band back then. It was decadence at the fullest. It really was that cliche rock star thing that it was. It was. I mean, there were fans everywhere. Every show was sold out. Like you said, there were kids waiting outside the hotel. There were people that when you shook their hand, they cried. I mean, it was a lot to mess with your head, but somewhere in my head, I was like, it's not that I separated myself, but I was like, I'm the guitar player, I didn't write this song. So, it's like I was enjoying it, but I wasn't really like, it's almost like I didn't believe it, it's like I didn't really let it in, because I go, Axl wrote that song, or Slash wrote that song, Izzy wrote that song. I didn't. I'm playing it. I'm gonna enjoy the moment, but I didn't really let it in that much. So it was. I can honestly say that I was a little bit more adult about it when it did happen, because I, like I said, been around a little bit. I did enjoy it, but I didn't let it go to my head, basically.
So when you're sitting there now after the tour is when you recorded "Use Your Illusion."
Yes.
Okay. Now that was 2. Now was that always the idea to record 2, or you had so much material, or how does that come about? Because I know, like, I'm a big Springsteen fan.
Yeah.
And when he put out Lucky Town and another one, everyone's like, oh, he's putting out 2 and they're differently. The whole
well,
thing.
I got to tell you, bands like Guns N' Roses never really thought out anything. It really was. The band always was. We're doing it our way. Fuck everybody. And it's like we had enough songs. We're putting out 2 records. That's just the way it is. It's like there was no strategic thinking or anything like that. The band always operated that way. We did it on our terms, and we're going to keep doing it on our terms. People don't put out 2 records. We're putting out 2 records. You can't play a 3-hour rock show. We're playing a 3-hour rock show. It's just the way it was. The band was always like that. If you said you can't, then we're going to do it. And I love that about the band, because to be honest, the bands I was in before this band, I had to fight those fights. And to be honest, I lost a lot of times. Like I would go, I don't want that producer. He's not the right guy. And the record company, no, you have to use that producer or you don't make a record. So this was a band that really stood up for itself and it worked, So I actually really, like I said, I love that attitude about the band. And it really helped my personal confidence too over the years.
It's funny, I have Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 on cassette. The orange and the blue. I still the cassettes. Now, then the band breaks up. Yeah. Now, did you see it coming?
I'm sorry, say it again?
When the band breaks up,
I saw it coming.
Now, were you preparing yourself, or was it, at what point did you see it? Was it after the tour or after the album, or when did that happen?
I saw it while it was going down. There was a couple key things. First of all, when I got in the band, I knew that it could end at any minute. This was a very volatile band. There was a lot of things that didn't work about the band. That was just kind of like tension, and I knew it was going to snap at some point. Look, I'm not the brightest guy in the world, but I was real practical back then, and I could kind of see things the way that they're working. And that was another reason for me saying, look, I'm going to enjoy this while this is happening, is it may not happen for a long time. This could be the last tour. There are a lot of things that weren't working about it. So towards the end, once again, the tour went on for 2.5 years. That's a long time.
That's really long. To be with a girlfriend, to be in the house with them all the time.
Exactly. I had, there were people that had gotten married and divorced during the tour. That's how long it went on. I got to go to, like I said, countries. The band really broke down a lot of barriers. Nobody went to South America to play back then. We went to South America to play. It was wonderful. Czech Republic. We did a lot of different things. Israel. A lot of places bands never played that we got to really do. That was wonderful. So I had saw a couple things. Axl just during the whole tour seemed to really separate himself from the band. It really seemed, granted, I'm not getting into his head because I honestly don't know what he was thinking and stuff, but, the guys in the band had a lot of drug problems, drinking problems and stuff. So, it was kind of two camps. There was the Axl camp and there was the band camp. It's like, we played together on stage, but there wasn't a lot going on, afterwards. So I could tell that Axl started saying things like, when this tour is done, I'm never going to play these songs again. We're going to make a new record, and I'm never playing Welcome to the Jungle again. And just things that he was saying, like I was actually paying attention, and I go. And so when the tour was over, I had gotten a call from some friends of mine at Virgin Records, that go, hey, we'd like... do you want to make a solo record? Guns probably isn't going to make a record for a long time. Would you be interested? You have a lot of songs. And so I thought about it. I go, well, look, I want to be in the band. I don't want to be a solo. I want to be in the band. But as I started talking to the band guys, we're not going to make a record for a long time. It's like it could be 5-10 years.
Right.
Turned into 20 years before Axl made another Guns record. So I started making plans to make a solo record. I had, of course, asked the guys. I showed them all my songs, said, look, I'd rather Guns did these songs, but if you don't want them, I'm going to make a record. And they were totally cool with it. They supported me. And it really was the last time Guns N' Roses played on a record together was on my solo record. Axl was on it, Slash was on it, Duff was on it, Matt was on it, Dizzy the keyboard player was on it.
Now, were you writing a lot when? It must be a. I guess a lot must be going in your mind when you're on this big tour. You're playing these other songs, but then are you writing as you're on the road, your own material, or when you wrote that you were thinking, okay, I'm gonna give this to the band, or what was that?
Well, I wrote the songs that I was writing while I was in the band. I was writing for the band. Like I was hoping they would be for the band. I honestly had no thoughts of ever being a solo artist. Right, I was doing that. But I did have a lot of songs that I had written before I joined the band. It was kind of going to be like the next Kill for Thrills record, really, is what it was. And so I showed them, like I said, when the tour was over, we were all throwing songs around, hey, check this out, check this out. I gave them to Slash, I gave them to Axl, and they said, no, I'm not interested. Just, do whatever you want with them and stuff. When it's time for us to make another record, we'll all get together and we'll write and make another record.
So you saw the band breaking up. Yep. But then you were prepared because I just said you had this solo thing, so you're not like someone who sits there and goes, "Hey, I'm in I'm in a TV series, and all of a sudden the series is canceled." What and so you had an option, and you had.
I did have an option, yeah. Also, even though I had been in the band, I only been in the band for a couple years. The other guys, when the tour is over, they can really take a couple years off. You know, they had made a lot of money and stuff. I wasn't in, you know, I was newly in the band. The only money I earned was that couple years of touring and stuff. So in all reality, I did have to keep working. You know, it's like I couldn't just say, all right, I'm going to take next 5 years off. You know, I needed something to keep going, you know, in between. So it was also to keep me busy. It was while I was making my solo record and touring on it that the band really started falling apart. You know,
okay, sorry.
Yeah, but anyway, that's when, you know, the calls started going, you know, back and forth, like, you know, this is not working. I don't want to play with him anymore. I don't want to do that anymore, and all that. So the band started disintegrating. You know, while I was doing my solo tour, Slash was making a record, Duff was, everybody was apart. Is when it started happening.
Now, what is it like though? You go from playing with this big band, and now you're going to a solo record, and now it's the burden of everything's on you. I mean, if there's a bad show, it's not like if Guns N' Roses is a bad show, well, Axl's off or something.
Yes.
Now it's and if it's critically gets panned, which your first one was. What was your first CD?
My first CD was 94, I think it was 94, 95.
So now, did you feel pressure, or just as an artist, did you say, I gotta really kick some ass here? I came up.
No, you know, it's funny you say that because I didn't feel that pressure. I actually came out with like a lot of confidence. I mean, that was the one thing that the Guns N' Roses gave me. Like I said, it was almost like a new attitude of that, you know, that fuck you attitude of, you know what, this is my turn to do what I want, and I wasn't. I guess you know, maybe in the back of my mind, I had Guns N' Roses. So if it didn't do well, it was like, oh, it's just a guitar player, you know, screwing around, you know. I didn't feel that pressure. I mean, I know the record company, you know, was pressuring me about certain things, but I really had this inner confidence at that time that I was just going to go, you know, I'm going to do my thing. You know, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you know, probably in the back of my mind, I said, hey, I got my band. So
right now, when you went back to touring on the solo album, what size houses were you playing to, and what
different from stadiums?
Yeah, what is that like? Because I mean, I've noticed that, you know, even like with comedy and stuff like that, sometimes when there's a smaller crowd, it's just a much better set because you have that feeling, you know.
Well, you do have a connection. I mean, I'd like to, you know, say the romantic thing and say, oh yeah, it's great. The people in front of you connect with you. Yeah, but I mean, look, it is a different thing. You know, when you're playing stadiums, it's extremely impersonal. It is so much more about performance, but you're almost like performing God. You know, it's like you're just going out. It's really hard to connect with that audience. You know, maybe Bono or Axl has a different view of that, you know, but I do find it easier, you know, playing in an arena, a theater, or a club show for me, because you get that feedback right in your face. You know, it's like if a song's not working, it's not working, you know, it's right then and there. The stadium is so hard to tell, you know,
right.
Things, you know, and especially nowadays, you know, things are different now. You know, everybody has in-ear monitors. You know, everything is very interior now. You know, it's like that connection is really getting lost. Like I said, you know, everything's here. You know, you don't even hear the audience. You know, you're only hearing, you know, the music that's being played and stuff. So I still try to, you know, keep that connection and stuff. I mean, I always say that to me, that's what performing live is it's a connection.
What is it like when you hear hundreds of thousands of people just cheering? I mean, do you almost get like knocked over? I mean, I think because the energy, first of all, I sort of think you'd be like in a limbo because there's so much music coming out, so that can carry you, but there's so much coming in. It's almost like a dehumidifier. It's like it comes up. What, I mean, is it just overwhelming when you hear? Or
it is a great feeling if you're able to accept it. I do think that there are musicians, performers, artists that don't let it in, you know, that don't let that love in, you know, from that audience. I've never been one of those people. One of the things I remember about, you know, those stadium shows is we were playing the Rose Bowl with Guns N' Roses, and this was 80,000 people. I mean, it's one of a big show. And there's a part in the Guns N' Roses set where I do this solo. It's just me out on my own. I start playing Wild Horses from the Rolling Stones. Slash comes out and we do a little duet together and stuff. It's a really nice moment. No one behind us. And when we did the Rose Bowl, I walked out to the edge and people were screaming. It was a moment that I actually stopped, took a breath, and said, I'm gonna remember this.
Okay.
And I actually said that to myself. And to this day, like I said, 20-something years later, I still remember that moment. And like I said, I just say it's love. It's just, feeling the love.
So when you leave the band, you start doing your solo project. Then the band's over.
Yeah.
So now your solo career is going well.
Yeah, it's doing good. Yeah.
And you sort of now do you feel like you're reinventing yourself? Are you going to different? Are you staying to the music you play for Thrills, for Kills and Candy, or are you going a different route in your musical taste now?
I mean, one thing I always thought is the music that, for myself as an artist, I really have played the same music I always have. I mean, since I was a 17-year-old kid to a 50-year-old man, I really still like the same music that I like. It's just guitar-driven rock and roll. I don't really think that the songs on my first solo record, to stuff I've done with Guns N' Roses, to stuff I've done with Kill for Thrills, to stuff I did last week is really that different. There's a lot of ways of looking at that, but I mean, it's just, I always wanted to perform, write the music that I like, that I want to hear. I write a record that I want to hear myself. I don't do it for the fans. I do it for myself. And so, yeah, when I was just doing the music that I loved at that time, which really was just rock. I wasn't, making a statement or anything. I was just trying to make a living doing what I loved. Right. Really.
Now, you said when you were younger you'd loved Kiss and you'd loved something. Now, when you were with Guns N' Roses, did you get to meet those guys?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was that like? Because these are guys that when you were 17, I mean, the reason why you started playing guitar is because who'd you met? Did you meet both of them?
Everybody, actually. I mean, obviously I didn't meet John Bonham, but what's funny is some of the guys in Kiss, Gene Simmons, I'm actually friends with through the years. Strangely enough, Gene Simmons helped my daughter get into college like a year ago.
How'd that happen?
Isn't that strange? It's a strange story. My daughter had just graduated high school, had applied to colleges, but the one college that she wanted to get into, her number 1A, she got waitlisted. I was doing a concert in South America with Gene Simmons, and we were sitting on the airplane talking. He's talking about the kids, and I go, "Yeah, my daughter, wants to go to school." He goes, "What school is that?" I go, "Pitzer." He goes, "Both my kids go to Pitzer." I go, "Really?" I go, "So you love?" He goes, "Love them." He goes, "We're on the board, blah blah blah." And I go, "Well, can you?" And he did. Gene Simmons wrote a beautiful letter on behalf of our family and my daughter. And next thing, we got a call from Pitzer, and my daughter got in because of Gene Simmons.
See, that's cool. That's when I mean, that's just and that's what's great because as rock stars get older, stuff like that happens, and you go, they're normal. It's like people don't understand this, but behind the stage, they're
relationships,
normal people,
and there are some really good relationships. And once again, look, I'm sure I'm not in Gene's top 25, maybe 100 friend list and stuff, but that was a wonderful thing to do. He did not have to do it, but to sit down, write a letter, not on the spot, he did that, and I thought that was a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Now, in the big Guns N' Roses when you're in it, did you meet anyone that you were just like blown away, like just someone who came up and said, "We love what you do"? Did that ever happen?
Yeah, I mean, lots of people. I actually, I have a funny. How I met Jimmy Page and Robert Plant story. You want to hear that? Okay. Yeah. So, South America, Guns N' Roses was one of the only bands with the Rolling Stones, Madonna, the Ramones that ever went down there and played. And when Guns N' Roses played down there, we played 3 nights of like 80,000 people a night. They were huge, huge shows. So, the fans, there'd be thousands of kids outside our hotel. We couldn't do it. I mean, it was like Beatlemania. It's everything that you would think being a rock star was. So in 94, when I made my first record, I actually went down to South America with my own solo band, and I opened for Aerosmith. At the same stadium that Guns N' Roses played, I actually played with my band with Aerosmith. But the difference was, Aerosmith coming down to South America was not the same as Guns. Guns was just one of those bands. Like I said, it was like Beatlemania down there. So when I got down there with my solo band, there weren't thousands of kids, but there were hundreds of kids outside the hotel that had like my Gilby posters and all this, but there were nothing for Aerosmith.
Wow.
It was a very odd thing. Look, we can talk about it all day. I mean, I really think it was an age difference thing. I was a little bit younger and things like that connected with the audience. So it was kind of like a joke, that, I couldn't go anywhere, but Steven Tyler could walk out the front door. It was, I was enjoying it, and I was making fun with it and everything. So before the concert, I went down to the lobby. My tour manager pulls me aside. He goes, Gilby, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant are here. They're doing a Page Plant record, and they're promoting it down here. He goes, and Steven Tyler and the guys are all in the lobby. Why don't you come say hi? So I came down. I had known Steven a little bit, Can't say we're friends, but, we're at least, could say hello. So I went there, and the guys were all talking. My tour manager introduces me to Robert Plant and Jimmy Page. He goes, Gilby, meet Robert. And Robert Plant looks at me. He goes, Gilby. He goes, no, I obviously know who Guns N' Roses are. He goes, you're a huge band. He goes, but I don't know who you are, But your fans have been keeping me up for the last 3 nights, screaming your name outside my window. He goes, I literally had to change hotel rooms because I've been hearing Gilby all night long.
See, that's like you're going, wow, that's just too cool.
That was a fun, moment.
So after your Guns N' Roses and after your solo, I know you seem to have been very eclectic projects. Now, is that something that like you played with a Slim Jim Phantom?
I played with who?
Slim Jim.
Yeah, Slim Jim Phantom. Yeah.
Now, how did that come about? Because it's you think, okay, and I'm 50. I just turned 50. So like when the Stray Cats, that was like for us, it was like the different look, and it was cool.
Oh, I agree.
You think like it's too. Now, did you meet him through biking or?
No, I actually met Slim Jim. Slim Jim owns. I met Jim. Honestly, I probably met him like in the 80s. Jim used to own a club in L.A. It was on Hollywood Boulevard, and I don't remember the name of it, but it was a big hangout at that time during the 80s. And then later on, in the late 90s, he owned a club called the Cat Club on Sunset Boulevard, and we used to kind of do our drinking there. If we went to the Whiskey, we'd walk next door to the Cat Club, which was next door, and we'd drink. And Jim owned the club. So we started having little jam nights on Thursday nights at his club. I mean, we're talking a place that held 150 people. And we just kind of became friendly. And like you said, Stray Cats is very different from Guns N' Roses. But when Jim and I talk about music, we can talk about David Bowie. We can talk about the Rolling Stones. We can talk about the Beatles. There are things in between those bands that we have in common. And so when we would play on those Thursday nights, we'd just do jams and stuff. Like I said, we'd play Stones, we played Beatles, we played Bowie, all these things that we really did have in common.
So then you guys just said, did you ever record together?
Yeah, we recorded a record called Colonel Parker together. It was, once again, just a fun thing that kind of happened organically from those Thursday night jams. That Thursday night jam lasted for like 9 years.
Well, no, is that the blues?
It was called. It was actually called the Starfuckers.
Okay,
but we had some different names. Like if we went somewhere else, we called it Blues Mafia. We called it the Starfuckers. We called it Colonel Parker. It was kind of the same band that we just morphed into some different.
And
things.
that's the one that's Baked Potato.
Yes, we played the Baked Potato too.
And no, the Baked Potato, was that the one in Hollywood or the one in the Valley?
No, the one in the Valley. The Valley. Yeah, the Valley is the original one that's been there for 100 years.
Because I used to hear about a jam night. Like someone told me when I moved there, someone said, they said, "Oh yeah, they all like the metal guys and all the other. It's crazy."
And blues guys playing together.
So what is it like when you do a jam night? Did you get like 8 guys on stage and just how do you?
Sometimes it's only 3 or 4 guys on stage. I mean, usually it would start with there was a guy that played backup keyboards in GNR called Teddy Andriatis, Teddy Zigzag, we called him. Teddy came on with GNR. He played harmonica, played a little keyboard, sang a little background vocals. He always had a Tuesday night jam called the Screaming Cocktail Hour. And Slash would come down, Zakk Wylde would come down, Ace Frehley would come down. I mean, it was crazy. It was this little blues club that really, once again, held 100+ people that would get some crazy rock, legends. Steve Lukather would come down. I mean, it was just fun, and you never know who would come down that night. And it was fun because we were out of our element. We're rock guys and stuff. I mean, of course, blues is based, in the beginning of rock and roll and stuff, but we're not real blues guitar players, So it was always fun to get together and try some things live.
That must have been great, though, because you're just so many different influences and just different people and so many. Well, first, if you broke it down, you could write a book on how many stories. I mean,
absolutely, yeah. I mean, between those Thursday nights at the Cat Club, like I said, we had Brian May there. We had Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden. Right. I mean, we had some crazy people sitting in, that just came down that heard there was actually Axl Rose. When Guns N' Roses split up, I hadn't spoke to him in 6-7 years. He showed up at the Cat Club on Thursday night.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So when we were talking, we have about 10 minutes left. We were talking about your motorcycles. Now, how long have you always been into cycles, or when
Always.
did that start? Like back when you were a kid, did you?
When
love
I was
them?
a kid in Ohio and I was like 6 years old, across the street from where I grew up was a Hells Angels hangout. And so when I was a kid, every day there were motorcycles and barbecues and all that stuff happening across the street. And of course, as a boy, I was like, oh my God, choppers and, guys smoking cigars and weed and all kinds of stuff. And one of my best friends lived in that house. Of course, no parental supervision at all.
Right.
But, I was just, enamored with that. That was just, for me, I don't know, it just really turned me on, when I was a kid.
Now, how many bikes do you have?
Now I have 3 because I just sold one to the Hard Rock.
And so the one in Palm Springs?
No. Actually, I think it's going to Mexico. You sell to Hard Rock, you don't know where it's going
No,
to
because
go.
my girlfriend and her mom was just visiting. They were at the Palm Springs Hard Rock, and I guess Matt Sorum
Matt's bike is
has
probably
a bike there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he said someone from Guns N' Roses, and that's funny. So now when you went to Sturgis, what was that like? Did you start from California and just drive out?
Yeah, absolutely. We I love adventures, and somehow I get to talk my friends into it. But yeah, like this year we didn't have so many. We've been doing it for about 7-8 years in a row, where we get together and we ride. We ride to Sturgis, we do shows, and then we ride back. Like last couple of years, my whole band rode to Sturgis, did the shows, and actually rode back. But a couple of years ago, we had 13 guys. And we did it. We left. It usually takes us about 3 days to get there. We stay there sometimes 3 days. Last year we stayed for a whole week, which was actually wonderful. But yeah, it's fun. I mean, we get into trouble along the way. I mean, it really is. Sometimes we think it's like the early 70s, late 60s, like old school choppers.
Right,
and stuff.
Easy Rider.
Yeah, Easy Rider. We really do. I mean, I'm still amazed that the wives let us go, but they do.
Yeah, it must be also just, you have guys like, because some people think, oh, long hair guys on cycles, they must sit, how people think.
Yeah, but you got, exactly. I mean, look, as we all know, we only get this one life,
Right.
and we really have been having such a blast. I mean, it takes like about 10 days total, and I know that I do have some friends that's hard to squeeze that 10 days out, but if it's something that you enjoy, we plan it and we do it. We do Mexico too. We go down to Mexico. We ride down to San Felipe, Ensenada, do like a little 4 or 5 day trip, camp out on the beach, everything.
So now you're back. You're doing touring right now.
Yep.
Okay. Now I know you were in South America a little. Was it South America a little?
South America just like 2 months ago.
And that was like with an all-star band.
That was, yeah. We have this band called Kings of Chaos, which is actually basically Guns N' Roses without Axl. It's myself, Matt, Slash, and Duff. And then we have a couple different singers. Miles Kennedy, who plays in Slash's solo band. Joe Elliott from Def Leppard. Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple. We had Corey Taylor from Slipknot. We've had Gene Simmons. We've had Sebastian Bach, Billy Duffy from The Cult. We've had some great people.
So you just call these guys and go, hey, man, we're going to go to these shows.
Actually, Matt calls them.
Does he? Okay, no,
Yeah,
it's just,
Matt does, man. He's made the calls and basically says, look, we're going to do a run of dates. It's an all-star band. It's called Kings of Chaos, but man, it's been so much fun.
because wasn't Steve Stevens in it?
Steve Stevens is
Yeah,
in it
'cause I
too.
was
Yeah,
thinking-
I apologize for not mentioning
just
Steve.
for us, though, as kids,
Yeah.
when I was watching MTV, you remember his hair. It was so different than it was that
Steve
black hair.
looks exactly the same. I don't know how he does it, but it's unbelievable.
Now, your band now. Now, how did you meet Troy?
Troy. How did I meet Troy? I honestly don't remember how I met Troy.
I know he drums for you.
Yeah, he plays drums. He's been playing drums with me for about 3 years now. The same solo band I started in like '94, I basically still have today. So I'll go between, playing guitar for somebody. Like I played guitar for Heart. I played guitar for Nancy Sinatra.
What was that like? I mean, that's a legend. I mean, that right
wonderful. The only problem was I got fat because Nancy is really that old school Italian. So you'll play a show
Italian.
at 11 o'clock at night, and then she'll go to Patsy's at 3 o'clock in the morning and have steak and pasta and all that. Man, I couldn't keep up with her.
But that must be weird. All of a sudden,
great.
Nancy Sinatra. I mean, going from and even Heart. I mean, Heart's a Hall of Fame group. I mean, we all grew up with Heart. So then your band has been pretty much the same, but you go off at times and do these.
Yeah,
projects.
I do my solo gigs. Like if there's not, like a paid guitar gig where I just play guitar for somebody, I always keep my solo band together. So if it looks like the next 6 months there isn't any other work, like we'll go out and do dates and stuff. It's just under my name, Gilby Clarke. And I play like, I've made a bunch of records on my own, but I play some Guns stuff. I may even play Nancy Sinatra's song, some Rolling Stones, some Beatles, really the same kind of music that I've grown up with, It's just, I call it just rock and roll, man. It's just, if you're a fan of hard rock, you'll love the show. The musicians are fantastic. Sometimes we'll pull out a song that we just learned that day or didn't learn, but the sets are very fresh. Pulling new songs all the time and stuff. Like we're good at entertaining, and like I said, the musicianship is good.
Now, do you constantly still write new material? Do you try to keep, or you just like
I
sometimes
try.
get lazy? I mean, I think you have so much, but you probably have such a huge collection of songs, and plus you said you play other songs. It must be sometimes hard because you're going, I'm going out, I'm doing what I love.
It is hard.
People are coming to see me. Do I really want to write something? Because this is going to be a whole process.
It is. I mean, I try to. I tried to not look at it like work. I tried to look at it from an artistic standpoint. And actually that is why it does get hard, because sometimes I'll be working on a song like I'm inspired. I have an idea. Oh, I want to write a song with like this country kind of guitar part. And as I start working on it, and I start thinking to myself, you know what? I've already written 3 of these.
Right.
So unless it really does have a new twist on it, I got to tell you, I put it in the back seat. And that does happen a lot over the last 3 to 4 years, because I'm terrible at writing another song if I've done something like that before. I always try to write something, like I said, that I haven't done before, or once again, a song I would want to hear. So yes, it is. As I'm getting older, it does get harder and harder for me to write songs. I have friends that can write 20 songs in a day. I never got it. I'm not that guy. I can write 20 songs in a year.
So you're coming up on a tour. How do you pick where you're going to play?
How do I pick where I'm going to play?
Like you're playing like towns. Like I know you guys are going to Chicago. Or
yeah.
Milwaukee.
We're going to we have a little run that we're going to St. Louis. We're going to Chicago, Milwaukee. Things just kind of usually what happens is there's an anchor date. We get offered like either through my agent or a management thing goes, hey, we have this good payday gig, and then what we do is we put shows around that anchor gig. That's usually what happens. In this case, we had an anchor gig in St. Louis, so we put all the shows around that. In South America, just a couple months ago, I actually went and played about 7 shows on my own with my solo band, and then I went and switched over and did the Kings of Chaos dates. So I had some anchor dates in Argentina, and we put together Brazil, Uruguay, Paraguay, all that kind of stuff.
Now, is it easier touring now because you're only going out for a little pop compared to when you went out for 2.5 years ago? I mean, you sit there and go, okay, this is fun, and it's going to be over, and you come back home. Do you like that feeling now that you're older?
Yes, it is. It is a lot easier. It just. Once again, it depends. If I had a brand new record out and I'm promoting something really fresh, then I probably would go out for 6 months or whatever. But it's a different time right now. I mean, the competition is brutal. For a guy like me, I'm really just a guitar player, so it's hard to go out there and try to convince people not to pay for that $250 Rolling Stones ticket and come see me. So it is a lot harder to get gigs. We find ourselves playing internationally a lot more because America switches trends so quickly.
Right.
Like right now, hard rock is not fashionable. It is not popular right now. But in Europe, South America, it's very popular, still doing as well as it did in the 80s.
I want to thank you for coming on. It's just been a great interview. And tell everyone your info, your contact.
Okay,
the website's great. Your
once again, I have a website still, just gilbyclarke.com, and Clark's got an E. I have a Twitter account, which I think is Gilby Clarke.
I think it is.
I think it's Gilby Clarke. I have Instagram. It's Gilby GTR. I have a Facebook page. I have everything. Just if you search my name, it comes up on all those different formats.
Now, are you playing at the Viper Room very soon?
I'm playing thank you for reminding me. I'm playing the Viper Room this Monday night. We only play the Viper Room once a year, and this is our Viper Room show. So it's going to be this Monday night. We play at 10 o'clock, not too late for a Monday night, and it'll be actually Troy will not be with me because he's got a gig out in the Midwest somewhere. somewhere. Right. But Chad Stewart is playing drums, and EJ Curse, who is my normal bass player, is playing bass.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on. It was great.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
People, follow me. Twitter at Cooper Talk. Also, if you want to hear past episodes, I have 220 episodes up at coopertalk.net. Or if you have an Android phone, go to the Google Play Store, type in Cooper Talk, one word, and my app comes up. If your iPhone, type coopertalk.podbean.com/mobile/ you get the iTunes app. Also, don't forget, what was I going to say? Oh, keep listening to my show and send me an email, cooper@indie100.com. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what kind of guests you want. I said, I'm trying to diversify a lot. I had Gilby on today, and on the next week I have the very funny actress Mo Collins and the very funny Timothy Stack, who wrote for My Name is Earl and also was on Son of the Beach, and he's just a hell of a talented guy. So follow me. Go to iTunes or Cooper Talk. You can type in Cooper Talk, one word. You can listen to past episodes. And please do follow me. Keep listening. Remember, don't forget, drink your water. Eat your vegetables, take your vitamins. I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. You guys have a wonderful weekend.